The mountains outside our town are the loudest quiet I know. They sit there like a reminder that the ground can go up if it wants to, and meanwhile, my life had managed to become flat. The plains of routine, same truck, same freeway, same late return where I slid a key into a lock I'd barely felt in my hand, ate dinner without tasting it, and fell asleep with a laptop cooling my thighs like a shallow lake. I was 39 and very good at moving dirt that didn't belong to me. I was less good at moving dirt that didn't belong to me. I was less good at moving the kind piled up between me and my wife. I'm Blake, construction project manager, which means I wrangle timelines for a living and let them wrangle me in return. My job eats daylight. It eats conversation too, if you let it. For years I let it. I told myself it was a season. In construction, every season is a season, until you look up and can't remember when you last watched a movie on a couch without a schedule open on your phone. Our apartment has a view of the foothills if you squint and stand near the window above the kitchen sink. If I looked just right, I could pretend we were on the edge of wilderness and not in a two-bedroom that smelled like lemon cleaner and the ghosts of dinners we were too tired to plate properly. Sarah, my wife, is 37. She works at a clinic over on Broadway, the kind of place that hums with fluorescent lights and people who are trying hard. When she gets home, she is sometimes quiet and sometimes loud, and the loud is never about herself. It's about an elderly man who forgot his coat and a kid who held her breath through a vaccination. She tells stories like she is laying down a coat over a puddle for me to walk across. Somewhere, slowly, the coat became thicker, and the puddle became a pond, and then a lake, and I forgot that the point was to cross at all. One Tuesday, after I'd driven back from a site east of I-25 with rebar numbers in my head like a song I didn't choose, she was waiting at the table with a bowl of soup so thick it held the spoon up. The light was low. The mountains were printed on the sky the way they do when the day doesn't want to go yet. She looked at me, and her face did a thing I didn't recognize, like a little switch had been thrown inside. "I have to say something," she said. My laptop bag thumped softly on the chair. It was always in motion, like if I set it down too hard it would break and we'd have no money and the entire city we were building would fall into a hole. "Okay," I said, "because I'm not stupid. I know when the air has shifted." "It was a long time ago," she said, "when I would sit here and listen to you type and count the seconds until your bowl got cold. It wasn't love. It wasn't even, I don't know what it was, Blake. I'm not trying to keep it. I just can't be the only one who remembers it happened." Soup steam fogged my vision and then cleared, and I realized the fog was not from the soup. I sat down without meaning to. The chair found me. "What are we talking about?" "I met someone from the clinic group. Not my shift. We had coffee twice. Once it wasn't coffee." There is a special kind of breath a person takes when time splits. I took that breath and tried not to make it a sound she would have to carry forever. People think the worst part of hearing this kind of thing is the picture reel. Your brain starts projecting. The worst part, for me, was the way the apartment seemed to lean, like it had discovered slant all at once. "How long ago?" I asked. 2 years, she said. "After that week you slept at the office because the elevator vendor moved the install up and I didn't see you except on FaceTime. I'm not saying it to blame you. I'm saying it because I understand how I got there." I stared at the table we bought used and sanded together one spring evening when the light went on and we didn't have curtains yet. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I can't keep doing this thing where I schedule us like patients and we never show up. Because I hear myself saying, 'When you're home's,' like it's a spell and I'm tired of magic. Because it's not about you forgiving me. It's about us admitting what we each did to the air in here. I don't remember tasting the soup. I do remember the small sound the spoon made when I set it down, which felt suddenly like the only clean sound in the room. People talk about couples therapy like it's a court date. We didn't do it like that. We made an appointment because our schedules respected calendars more than they respected the two people who were being scheduled. The therapist's office faced west. The afternoons in there were always 3 shades brighter than the morning would have allowed. We sat on a couch made for calm people and learned to say things without naming them as blame. In that room, Sarah's voice was careful, as if each word had to be measured on a small silver scale. "I made a choice," she said. "I am responsible for that." I felt the words like gravel I could stand on. I wanted to live there, without my laptop. At home, everything didn't behave. We made rules because that felt like making progress. 2 untouchable evenings per week where my laptop stayed zipped like a mouth. Morning walks before work on streets that still smelled like damp concrete and sprinkler water. Phones face down after 9. Rituals, the therapist said, are scaffolding, not decoration. I like that. I build scaffolding for a living. It makes people brave enough to touch places they couldn't before. The first week, it felt almost like a new house in a familiar neighborhood. We put our shoes by the door and actually talked before one of us got gravity drunk and fell into the couch. I grilled chicken at a reasonable hour and watched Sarah's shoulders decide they still knew how to drop. We walked our little loop past the elementary school and the old brick house with the glass porch and then up to the ridge where you could pretend to see the whole world if you stood on your toes. We spoke like the people we had been a few months into dating when saying, "What time is your lunch?" meant, "I can't wait to look at your face," and asking, "Do you want peaches?" meant, "I like buying things you might bite." But the body keeps score in ways it doesn't ask permission for. In the quiet parts of the night, my brain chewed on the dates. 2 years, twice coffee, once not coffee. It went to a place I'm not proud of, where proof becomes a shape you think you can hold, and trust is a bowl you keep tipping to see if there's a crack, only you didn't notice before. It was small stuff at first. A credit card receipt that popped up on my phone because I hadn't turned off alerts for the joint account like I meant to. Gas at a station outside Lyons on a night she told me she had traded her shift to close. An email subject line I half saw when she opened her laptop on the couch. Estes Park Lodge, reservation update. My chest did that squeeze thing again, like a shirt collar I suddenly didn't fit. "Hey," I said that night, trying to keep my voice down where normal people keep it. "What's Estes Park Lodge?" She looked up from whatever she was reading, eyes narrowing the way they do when a person is assembling a puzzle they didn't know they were buying. "It's where the clinic did a retreat that year. You didn't put it on your calendar because your elevator was being born." "Yeah, was that when?" "No," she said. "No, that was not it." I wanted to say okay. I wanted to hand her my belief like a receipt she could put in a drawer. Instead, I went online later and realized she was right. The clinic retreat had indeed been there in the fall, months after coffee. Twice. I felt like I had been given a quiz I didn't want to take and passed a question I didn't want to answer. My watch, yes, the one I said was dumb when she bought it for me because it made my wrist vibrate when I decided my phone did too much vibrating already, started telling me I was sleeping badly. It told me my heart spiked at 2 in the morning. It told me I took 87 steps between 1,005 and 1,017 a.m. in a house the size of a consideration. The thing about those little graphs is they act like an alibi. You can point to them and say, "See, I wasn't okay," but they don't tell you why. I remembered, unhelpfully, that when she wore hers, the watch counted steps when she did laps of the apartment during long calls with insurance. It counted steps when we fought and she needed the hallway to soak up her pacing. It counted steps when she couldn't sleep and pretended not to wake me, quietly emptying the dishwasher like a burglar who only stole the idea of dishes. "I don't want to fact-check my marriage," I said at therapy. "It makes me feel like I am failing some course no one else is taking." The therapist nodded without giving me a gold star. "Then don't," she said. "But don't pretend it didn't happen either. Both of you will need to hold both of you." Sarah squeezed my hand. In that room, she was the best version of brave. "I messed up," she said. "I am not making excuses for that. But I'm also saying we were a two-person problem before I made a one-person choice." At home, she sometimes tried to downshift the blame, like riding a hill without frying the brakes. "It was a still point," she said one night, in a week that felt like I was holding my breath for 7 days. "It was a point," I said. "I don't know if still is the word I'd use." "I wish I had told you then," she added. "I wish I had been here to hear it," I said, and we both sat with that wish like it was some small animal we could feed with good intentions alone. The second escalation came in a flavor I didn't want. I ran into Lila at the grocery store near the clinic. She was the nurse with the precise handwriting who had written a thank you note to Sarah when she covered an extra Saturday in flu season. She was loading celery and a watermelon into her cart like a person staging a very healthy picnic. "Tell Sarah I said hi," she said, and then, because humans cannot help themselves, we miss seeing her on Thursdays. She and Monica used to do the swap all the time. I smiled like my face still had practice. "Thursdays?" "Back then," she said, then gave herself a tiny shake like a dog remembering. "It is, in fact, wet." "Sorry, too much clinic talk. Just tell her hi." I carried the watermelon like proof of something and set it on the conveyor belt and went home and put it in the fridge and stared at it until the reflection in the stainless steel looked like a stranger who should be invited in because he might have something to say. That night, I said it. "Lila says she misses your Thursday swaps with Monica." Sarah's face changed like the sky changes when a storm realizes it's late for its appointment. "That was 2 years ago," she said slowly. "Yes, we traded Thursdays for a while." And one of those was, "Joe!" Yes, she said, and I watched the way relief and pain got on the same elevator inside my chest and pushed all the buttons. I don't want to keep doing this thing where I find out the whole by tripping over parts, I said. Every time you add half a word, I fall. She looked at me for a long time. I was afraid you'd leave, she said. You don't get to make your lie my leaving, I said, but I tried not to make it a weapon. I wanted it to be a hand on her shoulder, not a shove. We kept walking in the mornings. We kept our untouchable evenings. We kept choosing small, unheroic truth. She would say, I feel like hiding, and I would say, I feel like yelling, and then we would try to do neither. We failed some. We did okay more often than we expected. The mountains sat there like they'd invented the idea of patient. On a Sunday, we drove to Chautauqua Park without speaking much. We weren't not talking, we were saving. The trailhead was a parade of dogs who behaved better than most people and toddlers in hats too large for their heads. We started up the path, and the green wrapped around us, and I remembered how you can be inside a city and not actually inside it. We climbed until the town dropped away, and the flatirons pushed their shoulders into the sky like they had forgotten to ask permission. The overlook is not dramatic. It is a little wider than the path and has a rock that people treat like a throne. We stood near a couple who were taking photos with their arms out like their bodies were comments on a miracle that didn't need opinions. We didn't take a picture. We just stood and breathed while pine pitched its clean into our chests. I forgot how you laugh, I said. It came out like a confession. I mean, not what it sounds like, the way it feels in the room. That lift. She didn't answer for a second. Then she laughed, not loudly, but wholly, like a person setting something heavy down and hearing it land and realizing it didn't break. You used to make me, she said, on purpose. You'd tell a joke that wasn't funny and then look at me like you were proud of the attempt. I forgot about attempts. We sat on the rock throne when the couple moved on, our knees touching. The town was a toy landscape below. We were two people who had sworn to be more than the sum of our calendars. I won't ask you to pretend, she said. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to choose whether being in this with me is something that makes you more yourself, not less. I can't promise I won't get angry, I said. I can't promise I won't count things, steps, receipts, miles. But I can promise to tell you when I do, not make you guess. I can promise to stop trying to control the version of me you see, she said. I can promise to tell the whole even when the whole might send you away. We weren't in a movie. A hawk didn't circle at the exact moment we decided to be better. But a hawk did circle, because hawks do that, and the sound of wind in grass is a kind of applause if you decide it is. We walked back down without trying to kiss at every switchback the way teenagers do. We held hands where the path allowed it. We sat in the car and didn't turn the radio on, which for us was an announcement, not a lack. On the way home, we stopped for burritos the size of Late Choices and ate them in the park like we had invented eating outside. We talked about everything except bills. We didn't avoid bills like they were snakes. We saved them for later because later is where they belong. That week, we wrote our untouchable evenings on the calendar in fat black marker and put a sticky note on my laptop that said, "Hey man, not tonight." I set my status at work to unavailable in a way that made my shoulders twitch like a dog's in sleep, then settle. Sarah asked Monica for a new shift trade on a day that made sense and deleted the number she had kept in her phone, not because she used it, but because she had feared the gap it would leave if she didn't. It left a gap. We cleaned around it. We also failed because we are the kind of people who do. I worked late on a slab pour because the concrete didn't care about my fresh promises. I came home with that shallow lake laptop heat and put it next to me on the couch out of habit. Sarah's face did that particular stillness I had learned meant she was moving at high speed inside. "Untouchable evening," she said softly. "I know," I said, 20 minutes. 10, she said, "and you tell me what you're doing like I'm in your day with you." I told her about the pour, about the way the laser screed moves like a creature pretending it doesn't have a brain and still manages to lay down flatness like a religion. About the guy on the crew whose dad had just gotten bad news and how the whole crew had made the day move around that man's face because concrete cares about time but men care about each other when they remember they do. She listened like she had paid a ticket. I closed the laptop in 9. She failed, too. She got a text at 9:10 on an untouchable night from a clinic volunteer who had her number and an emergency that wasn't an emergency but felt like one. She picked up by reflex. I watched her lip move into that professional shape that steals warmth from a room like smoke under a door. I reached out and touched her knee. She kept talking. When she hung up, she said, "I'm sorry." I'm not a boss, I said, but I'm allowed to want your attention the way that person did, and I don't want to have to make a scene to get it. We put it on the list for therapy. The list is not a punishment. It is a door we remember to open. Evidence still wandered in like stray cats. A small envelope from the Estes Park Lodge with the words, "Thank you for your stay," printed on a cardstock that wished it had a better life. I showed it to Sarah as if a magician might be hiding behind it. "This," I said. She closed her eyes. "The clinic booked as a group, remember? They sent individual mailers." I kept that one. She took a breath. "Throw it away, Blake, or frame it and label it the thing that isn't the thing, but don't keep it like you're building a case." I threw it away. The trash can made an everyday sound. I stood there long enough to understand I had been holding my breath. I let it go. There was also the doorbell camera, which we installed after the neighbor had a package walk away, and we pretended it wouldn't happen to us next. It kept a record of me coming home at unholy hours and of Sarah coming home at normal ones, and of a raccoon who believed our stoop belonged to him. It held, too, the nights 2 years ago when she had gotten in at 1, something on a Thursday she had traded. I knew because I scrolled and scrolled one night until my thumb hurt and my heart felt like a suspect. I told her I had looked. I told her because secrets turn me into a person I can't lift. She took my phone and held it for a second and then set it face down on the table. "We both picked up tools we shouldn't," she said. "Let's decide what belongs in this house and what belongs at work." We made a list. Not on paper, in the air. We said, no building cases. Yes, building rituals. No pretending we are okay when we are not. Yes, telling the truth when it is small so it won't grow teeth. No hiding. Yes, rest. No punishment disguised as questions. Yes, questions that don't try to win. The mountains did not clap for us, but they didn't fall, which, in this town, is what passes for encouragement. The last big turn came on a Thursday a few months in. I had gotten home on time 3 days in a row, which felt like a parade I forgot to schedule. Sarah was on the couch with her feet tucked under her, reading a book that had a cover that made me think of steady weather. She looked up and said, "I haven't told you everything about that time." I leaned against the counter and let the angle hold me. "Okay." I said it was coffee twice, and once not coffee. It was twice not coffee. It ended when I realized telling you in pieces would be worse than telling you at all. I froze, and then I waited, and then I told you. But I told you the smaller version because I didn't want to watch your face for the bigger one. We had walked around this block so many times the map had worn thin. Somehow this still felt like New Street. I waited for the anger to put on its boots inside me. It didn't. What came instead was a kind of quiet, not the flat kind, the kind with a shape. "Thank you," I said, and meant it like there were nails in the words holding them to the room. "You aren't going to leave?" she asked. "I might, someday, if this keeps being a door we open only when the house is on fire, but not because you told the whole." She cried then, not like television, but like a person whose body had decided it remembered water. I sat next to her. We didn't do anything a camera would have wanted to record. We did honest. It felt like carrying a bean together and saying the weight out loud. We decided something simple the next day. Morning walk stay. Untouchable evening stay. If work tries to take one, we say no and let the consequences happen, like weather we can stand under in coats we bought on purpose. We decided to talk about money once a week and not in the kitchen while someone is chopping, because knives don't need tension. We decided we wouldn't measure success by our ability to forget, but by our ability to tell the truth without padding it. We also gave ourselves an end date, which sounds like giving up to people who have never tried. 6 months. Try. If it doesn't climb, it's okay to call the ground good enough and stop trying to make it pretend it is a mountain. Not because we didn't love each other, because love doesn't get to be an excuse for living badly. We put it on the calendar, small, like a dentist appointment. We did not circle it. We did not tell our friends we were brave. We did not write about it on the internet. We walked. We cooked. We slept like people who were trying. When we failed, we said so. When we succeeded, we didn't demand a medal. I took a Saturday off and we drove up the canyon with no agenda except breathing air that had met pine first. We didn't fix anything. We lived it. She told me a story about a kid at the clinic who laughed so hard at a sticker he hiccuped. I told her about a guy on site who had a scar that looked like a highway on his forearm and how he explained it without making it a show. "Rebar," he had said, "I forgot it bites." We nodded at the idea of things that bite when you forget to respect them. At night, sometimes, I still woke up with my heart doing its river thing. I put my hand on her back and counted breaths. If the counting was about fear, I told her in the morning. If the counting was about love, I told her then too. She started telling me in small, unspectacular ways when she felt the urge to perform calm. She would say, "I want to make this neat. I won't." I started telling her when I wanted to wrap myself in work like it was a cloak and vanish. "I want to answer the email so I don't have to answer you," I'd say, and we both laughed because truth has a way of turning knives into butter if you catch it early. This is not a story where we become new people by sheer will. We became slightly better versions of ourselves who remembered more often than not that time is something you spend on purpose or it will spend you without asking. We made the choice to stay and do it slower than TV teaches you. We left room for leaving not as a threat, but as an adult understanding that love without responsibility is just warmth, and warmth doesn't pour foundations by itself. If we don't make it 6 months or a year from now, it will be because we tried clean and learned something true. We'll split the books and shake hands like people who did more than sign forms. If we do make it, it will be because we built something boring and strong, breakfasts that don't get canceled by emails, evening walks that don't get hijacked by someone else's emergency, laughter that shows up without a stage manager. Either way, we stopped hiding in habit. We started choosing each other like you choose to look up at mountains and remember the ground under your feet is allowed to rise if you give it the chance. Would you stay and try with clear boundaries and a clock, or is walking away the only honest answer when truth arrives too late? What does responsibility look like in your house when forgiveness isn't a magic trick but a practice? If this spoke to you, like, comment, and subscribe.